Welcome to Connect to Joy. Your host, DeChaine, is an intuitive spiritual guide for practical matters and marconic multidimensional energy practitioner. Her quest is to help you realize new possibilities, discover and release what holds you back, and enable you to manifest an inspired life filled with joy. Join us on this journey of transformation. Now, here's your host, DeChaine.
Welcome, beautiful spirits. Today we're going to be talking about how to find our voice as we age with my guest, Stephanie Raffelock. As we age, we may find that people don't listen to us anymore, don't take us seriously, or that whatever we say falls on deaf ears. They may only speak to our children if we go to a medical appointment, and heaven help us if we find something new that interests us that seems totally different from other parts of our life. We may find that people around us question us at every turn. So how do we approach speaking our truth and finding our voice as we move forward with our life? Now, if you're listening to this as a woman approaching or already in your middle or beyond your middle years, or someone who's trying to understand a woman who's approaching or there already, I hope this episode will give you some peace and understanding of what you or someone you love is going through. And also, just maybe, more self-love to help you speak your truth and get you moving in the direction you want to go. That old paradigm was Maiden, Mother, Crone. Crone? Really? That has an extremely negative connotation and is not a very exciting thing to look forward to in your life. But my guest's new book, Creatrix Rising, puts forward a new word instead of crone. You got it, Creatrix. I just love that word. So before we go any further, let me introduce my guest. Stephanie Raffelock is the author of Creatrix Rising, Unlocking the Power of Midlife Women, which was released by She Writes Press in August of 2021. She's also penned the award-winning book, A Delightful Little Book on Aging. A graduate of Naropa University's program in writing and poetics, Stephanie has worked as a freelancer for the Aspen Times and the Rogue Valley Messenger. She's written and blogged for Nexus Magazine, Omaha Lifestyles, Care2.com, and 60andme.com, to name a few. A former podcaster and iHeartRadio host, she is now a popular guest on other people's podcasts, where she shares her passion for aging, women, and feminist history. She's building her speaker's resume by giving presentations for groups like Breaking the Glass and Wins at Charles Schwab. Her commitment for working with women extends to teaching personal development classes for the nonprofit Dress for Success. A recent transplant to Austin, Texas, Stephanie enjoys an active life with her husband, Dean, and their Labrador Retriever. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, why don't we just jump right in? What was it that got you interested in the subject specifically of women and aging?
I started writing about aging in my early 60s, just the personal experience that I was having. Somehow 60 is a threshold. You know, it's not quite midlife anymore. Usually by 60, people are through menopause. What was astounding to me was not just what I was discovering about myself, but the response that I got from other women who really wanted to say, I'm not done yet. I still have things to say. I don't want to feel irrelevant or insignificant. And that started the theme pretty much for me. Aging, how did we get to this place where ageism is the last sort of politically incorrect bastion in which we can make the bad joke, where we can still stereotype people without being called out for it?
Well, your story in the first part of your book is fascinating. Do you want to share any of your struggles that helped you on your journey to where you are now?
Well, honestly, I think that every struggle has helped me on my journey to where I am now. You know, I think that sometimes in life we get this sense that we're supposed to have something together, that we're supposed to have arrived at a certain point where we have it figured out. And the truth is, for me, that every aspect of life is worth figuring out. We unwind and we unravel the wounds in our life that help form who we are. And failure is sometimes a good thing. There's a Buddhist writer that I like named Pema Chodron, and she has this wonderful saying, and it is, when a thing happens, you don't always know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. And if you think about the people that you've talked to in your life that, you know, lost a job and it seemed so devastating, and then 3 months later got the job that was absolutely perfect for them, that's an example.
It's funny because I always felt my life was really easy because it was that, middle class kind of thing, just regular two parents. I was really lucky. Everything was just normal. And so I didn't really have much by way of struggle until my divorce. So that kind of redefined me. So when I was reading her story, I was looking at it going, wow, look at it's fascinating, especially from somebody who hasn't been to any of this major struggle stuff. And it wasn't necessarily for me reading it because you didn't go into anything that was really horrendous specifically. You kind of glossed over some of that part, but you kind of mentioned it. But it was fascinating with a lot of the different things you did and the scenes you were in. And it was like, wow, this book is worth buying just for this information alone, just because it's so fascinating. But then, of course, there's all the rest of the information that you give and the little workbook parts in between so people can actually grow on their own. Rather than just reading and kind of taking it in, you make it almost like a workbook.
Well, because we all have a story. And I think women especially haven't had the same opportunity in this world to tell their story, to stand in the light of their truth and speak it. So those questions were put in the book to encourage women to find what their personal story is and how empowering it is to have gone along the way and made mistakes and recovered. We think that courage looks like something with a gold breastplate and gold wristbands, and that makes us strong. But the truth is, courage really looks like skinned knees. It looks like baby barf on your shoulder. It's not very glamorous, but that's what real courage looks like. That was part of why I wrote some of the things I did in my book, to share with people that you don't have to have had the perfect life. In fact, I don't know that the perfect life really textures the heart in a way that we need to learn to become compassionate beings. We're compassionate not because we're good people. We're compassionate because we understand what suffering is, because we know what someone else is suffering. All of those life experiences kind of converge back to your, first question. It's like, well, what helped you in these difficult times? Well, once again, everything helps us. You can look at any phase of life. If we go back to high school, which is a long way back, I would not look at my high school days and say those were particularly great years. And I think for a lot of people, they're not. So kind of when we're in the middle of something, it seems tougher than when we get to the other side of it. And you realize that to grow psychologically and to grow spiritually, that's just to be human.
Yeah. I know that seeing and hearing other people going through things, unless you've done it yourself, specifically, like my best friend had migraines all the time, but I could never understand. It was always very inconvenient when she had them. It's like, oh, come on, we got to do this stuff. The only time I've ever had a massive migraine, I went, okay, I'm sorry. I'll never say another word to you again about this. And then when people said they had a migraine and they were walking around with their eyes open, not throwing up, I went, you don't have a migraine. You just have a bad headache. I understand the difference now. One time I said, thank you, God. That's all I ever need to have. I totally am changing my empathy for this person now. It was amazing because that's the first time I'd ever had anything like that where I totally got it because I was there with them. So I totally understand what you mean.
Well, I think you sum it up very nicely that, we have experiences that then give us empathy for other people. And what that does is it changes us. It grows us.
Yeah. I was wondering, because I haven't read your first book, so can you tell us a little bit of the difference between A Delightful Little Book on Aging, because that was an award-winning book, and the second book, Creatrix Rising?
Well, A Delightful Little Book on Aging was really a series of essays that I wrote over the first few years of being in my 60s. And they were pulled from various articles and newspapers and blogs. It was really just my experience about aging and how shocking it is to walk by the mirror one day and recognize that you're 64 years old and what am I supposed to do with this? That was that book. The difference between that book and Creatrix Rising is Creatrix Rising did a couple of things. It was much more memoir-esque. It does talk about my life as a little girl and as a young woman and some of the challenges and lessons that I had during that time. It also has the workbook factor to it, to encourage women to tell their own story, to know their own feminist history. And it's got a component to it of the name Creatrix. What is a Creatrix? When I first heard the word, I thought somebody had made it up. But Creatrix, it turns out, is really one of the three Greek fates. There was a spinner, a weaver, and a cutter. and the weaver was called the Creatrix. And the word literally means a woman who makes things. And that's how I see women at menopause being the threshold onward into their life. We become women who make things because all that mothering energy, which is such a juicy creative time. I mean, you physically create a child, but then you go through all the creativity of raising a child. All that energy has to go somewhere. So now it comes to a point in our life when we can use it just about anywhere. We become artists, we become gardeners, we become knitters, quilters, politicians. We become women who makes things. And that's where the word creatrix comes from. So that was a great part of the second book too. It's like, here's the background that I've lived through. And here's what I think we should be calling women as they get older, rather than the word crone. We should be calling them creatrices or creatrix, because we are women who make things. So that's the difference.
Well, thanks. And that actually answered one of my other questions about maybe we should tell the listeners exactly what you mean when you talk about creatrix, what that is. So that was perfect. You segued right in. I didn't even have to think about that one.
I read your mind.
Exactly. Let me talk to you about, we tend to stereotype people. So what stereotypes do you find are given women as they age? It might help people, especially women, to realize when they're being stereotyped, or men or other younger people to realize when they're doing it to people.
Well, one of the things that comes up is fragility. Women in general have been seen throughout the ages as needing male protection. And while I appreciate that very much, guys, there are certain things that I don't want to be protected from, and I can handle it myself. Thank you very much. There's a great moment with Liz Cheney and her father. And a news reporter says to Dick Cheney, well, what do you think of the way your daughter's handling this? And he said, my daughter knows how to take care of herself. And I went, good answer. He just, believed in her. So the first word that comes to mind as far as stereotyping that can become negative is fragility, that we're not nearly as fragile as people think we are as we age. Do things change in the body? Absolutely. I don't run anymore. My back won't take the pounding. That doesn't mean I'm sitting around in a Barcalounger staring off into space. I just found other things that replace that, whether it's walking or it's Pilates or it's swimming. It's something that doesn't have impact to it. Another word might be significance, insignificance, or irrelevance. I read something recently about a woman who had heard, how did this go? She had heard it must be hard to become older and not be able to turn heads anymore. And I thought, what a way to see a woman, as if our only function in life was to be sexually desirable, pretty while we're doing it, and you're done. That's it. So to not be able to turn heads anymore, I don't know of any woman over menopause that really regrets not being able to turn heads anymore. I think that rather that new creative surge that we find from the mothering years replaces that with, what can I now make? What can I now create?
Which in a way makes us way more attractive anyway, because we're doing things we love rather than trying to impress other people.
Well, yeah. And I mean, turning heads is such a shallow definition of what beauty is. I mean, I look at my mother, she was 90 years old when she died. And in her late 80s, her skin was lined and her hair was white. And I never once entertained the thought, gee, I wonder what she'd look like with less wrinkles. I mean, it's such a shallow way of looking at women. And unfortunately, older women are more subject to that. We have an entire advertising industry that targets women as their consumer between the ages of 20 and 45. Well, what happens when you turn 46? You don't wear workout tights anymore?
No, then you get the anti-aging cream and all those other things.
There you go. The anti-aging, which literally means against age, which nature-wise, biology-wise, doesn't make any sense at all. There is a reason that nature keeps us around past our childbearing years. And each one of us has to figure out what that is. For me, that's been what has taken the place of the childbearing years, is a sense of reflectiveness, a sense of contemplation, a sense of appreciating the miracle of life that I was given, and that I can see the whole arc from childhood to where I am now. And I go, isn't that just amazing?
I know. I love the way you talk about all of this because it really makes people think. And that's really all you can do because you can't change anyone or have anyone be different. I guess it's the same thing. To be able to just have a conversation and have people listen is something that they'll go, wait, what? Huh. And maybe they'll shift the way they approach people, or the woman will shift the way she's even just approaching herself.
I think that's the really big point, is the way that we see ourselves is paramount. And how do we see ourselves as we age? Do we appreciate the lines on our face as a map of where we've been and what we've been through? You know, do we love our bodies tenderly for what they no longer can do and the fact that they've carried us this far? I think that there's a lot that we can change within ourselves first, and then we model for the rest of the culture what needs to happen as far as how we view older people. Certainly one of the great things that I would like to see more of is intergenerational collaborations, intergenerational learning, intergenerational relationships. You know, we tend to stick to our little pod as we get older. And so all your friends are now, I'm 70. So, you know, all my friends are now 70. But what I find is that when I have those younger relationships in my life, it really enriches me. Not only do I get to share the wisdom of having lived this long, but I open myself to being a student to that young person that can bring light into my life. And I will tell you something about this younger generation coming up that I love about them so much, and I do think it will facilitate change about ageism, is that this younger generation is so inclusive, more inclusive than anything I've seen in my life. They just don't have judgments about who you are or what you're doing, the color of your skin, your religion, your sexual orientation. None of that matters. They just want to embrace and include. And I love that quality.
Which generation are you referring to?
Well, anything younger than me, I guess, at this point. Certainly the millennials, certainly Generation Z have more of that inclusiveness, I think, than my own generation did.
I know I had wanted to talk more about feeling obsolete and not having, like maybe feeling like we matter as we get older. And that's probably male and female, because especially men who, when they retire, all of a sudden, some of them die immediately because they have no more voice. They're done. All their passion has been taken away from them, especially if they're forced to retire. But women, I just feel like sometimes I haven't had much of it where I feel like I don't make a difference or that I don't matter, because I've shifted since my divorce and I've started doing things that make me kind of have fire under my butt, and I'm doing more. And I'm feeling I'm kind of like a steamroller of enthusiasm. So people kind of have to pay attention to me more than before. Is there anything specifically you wanted to get into about that? Maybe more about feeling obsolete or feeling like we don't matter?
I do think it's harder for men. I think the identity shift from being the warrior in the workplace to the archetype of the wizard is a more difficult transition for men. Women traditionally have had other women around them. So we know what it is to have support. We know what it is to reach out. So I think it's a little softer transition for us. But I think one of the things that has helped me the most, and it surprised me, is that my significance, my relevance it grows out of kindness. That when I'm kind to other women, to other men, when I feel like I can lift them up through encouraging, through supporting, it helps me grow as a human being. It gives me a sense of purpose. You can't go wrong with kindness and gratitude. It's like the little black dress of human existence. So I think that's one of the things that we can give ourselves. If we show that we are interested in other people, they will show that they are interested in us. But sometimes we have to be the one that starts that. We can't lament that the world is no longer interested in me. I am no longer relevant. We have to be the one that puts it out there.
I need to write that down. Kindness is like a little black dress. I love that.
Yeah. It's like the little black dress of human existence. It just goes with everything.
I did want to mention, too, moving on to something else. I had started my business, like I said, Connected Joy, after my divorce. I wanted to do something different, to be more meaningful, and to make a difference in the world, even, because I didn't want to go back to my old rut, and which was a great rut, but it was the same thing over and over again, and I didn't want to just go back that way. So I guess you could say I reinvented myself.
Mm.
And I was over 50 at the time, so I kind of felt like, okay, well, this is a little scary only because I'm older. Then maybe I should have figured this out 20, 30 years ago, but I don't know if I would have done it then. So let me ask you, do you find it common that women start new ventures at 50 and beyond and maybe reinvent themselves, or at least some new things?
I think more so now than ever before. Historically, women reinvent themselves. And I love the idea that reinvention is a tool that we can use time and time and time again. I have a friend who said to me a couple of years ago, she said, well, reinvention is really just reawakening. And I love the way that sets.
I love that.
But you don't just wake up once and it's like, voila, I'm enlightened. You wake up to life again and again and again. And that's a beautiful thing. So I love reinvention. And I love that you use that word for what you found in your life that gave you a sense of purposefulness and a sense of power.
It's interesting because a lot with my clients, I'm looking at them, and a lot of the ones that are women that are, like I said, over 50 or so, they are almost all of them finding new things to do, new ways of having their voice be heard. And that's why what you were saying so resonated with me, and why your book does, because it's like, yeah, I'm going to tell everybody that's in my client to go get your book.
Thank you.
Okay. Be aware that this is going to help you, but you have to do some of the work in yourself and do your own story. And I know you mentioned not only to me, I think in our emails or also online, that you want to help women write their own personal feminist history. When you say reimagine and rewrite their origin stories, I was wondering what you meant by that part of it, because we can all remember our past. Well, most of us can. To a certain extent, everybody thinks colored all our memories by our opinions of it and our judgments of it. But what do you mean by that?
Origin stories. I'm going to give you two examples of origin stories in Western history. The first one is the Pandora story, which came first. And Pandora was given an urn that she was told not to open. And by opening it, of course, she found out about the state of the human condition. And Pandora was punished for that act. That's one origin story. The other origin story is the Eve story. Eve was told not to eat from the tree of good and evil because she would then have self-knowledge. You can't exist as an innocent within the Garden of Eden if you have self-knowledge. Eve was punished for that. Women still buy into that story, that if they know themselves well, there is a punishment to be had for that. And in my generation, you saw it when a woman might try to stand up to a man who was harassing her. And what she would get from her girlfriends was not like, you go, girl, you put him in his place. No, what she was more likely to get was, well, boys will be boys. And so we need to change the way that we look at origin stories. So what if we took the story of Pandora and Eve and we said, it's really desirable for a woman to have self-knowledge. When you have self-knowledge, you are able to make certain choices and decisions in your life that serve you, that benefit you, because we have the intelligence and the heart to be able to do that and do it well. And yet here we are in 2022, and Roe v. Wade is in question, as if a man and a government is going to make choices about a woman's body, a woman's theological point of view as to when life enters the soul. And we certainly can't be trusted with making choices about our body. This is why we have to look at our origin stories differently and say, what I learn about myself is a good thing. that I reinvent myself is a good thing. These are things that truly are empowering as women. So that's what I mean by origin stories. We just need to look at them a little bit differently.
I'm glad I asked because I wasn't going in that direction at all. So it really makes a lot of sense what you're saying about that. So thank you. I want to go back to finding our voice as we age, since that's the title that I put on this thing. So I probably should circle back around to that. I know that women in general, there's a difference between finding your truth and speaking it. And to me, it might be slightly directional. I've been finding your voice as we age when you're talking about people not listening to you. And so I want to encompass both of those things, because I know that women in general sometimes feel like we're not heard, but it seems like it's much harder as we age to be heard. And I just recently started running into that personally, and I especially see it with my sister, who has been diagnosed with some dementia. And the fact that she was diagnosed with that and her husband announces it to the world sometimes before they even meet her makes them treat her like she is invisible, and she's still aware enough to go, excuse me, stop doing that. I see that happen, and it's like, wow, that's like the ultimate not listening and the ultimate judgment. Well, ultimate, but you know what I mean? It's like a huge one compared to what I'm used to. And I'm going, wow, I hadn't heard that before. I hadn't seen that before. I wanted to know if you're seeing that as well, how it's much harder for women as they age and to be heard, to be listened to. And do you find that? Is that one of the things you're trying to talk about?
Well, of course, I am an activist and an advocate for women being empowered regardless of age, but certainly in older age. And it's distressing to hear about your sister, because I think that we all want to be seen. We all want to be heard, and we all want to know that we matter. And I circle back around to the kindness thing, that true kindness, it isn't just giving someone a compliment for what they're wearing. True kindness has to do with how deeply we listen to someone and try to connect with them, heart to heart. And that helps the other person feel seen and feel heard and feel like they matter. And your sister experiences distress when somebody has labeled her before she's ever walked into a room, and because she can't be seen for who she is right now or heard. Then the question of matter comes up. I think it's essential to the human heart that we matter in our neighborhood, in our community, in our family, in our relationships. And that's just something I think we have to work on individually. Once again, you have to work on that in order to model for other human beings what that looks like.
It's funny, you've said kindness a number of times, and we were talking about reinvention, and it just suddenly dawned on me. It's like, I don't remember if they've come out yet or not, or if they're in the lineup, but I have one on reinventing yourself and one on kindness. And it was like, I went, oh, this is like perfect. I don't even remember if it's before or after this one's going to come out. Yeah, so I think they both are very important things. And I really appreciate what you're saying about, the way my sister feels when things like that happens, because I think I need to speak up more and try and maybe diffuse some of the situation when things like that happen, when I'm there, because it feels like I can help her be seen maybe more.
Yes.
I have been being her advocate. I know that when we go to doctors and things, I've been finding that that's the case as well, that I want to go because she can't remember what's said and she's not clear and her husband's not feeling well. So I bring her now to all the doctor's appointments and all those things. And I remember when my mom was brought as well to, she was older. She had an issue. She went to out here. It was Kaiser. And the doctors wouldn't even listen to her. They just said, go home. There's no problem. And she was like, I can't even walk. And so they had actually injured her in their little physical therapy thing where they put the weights on her legs and they pulled it the wrong way and they pulled her groin muscle out. And she was like going, I can't walk. I'm in pain. I can't go to the bathroom. I can't do a lot of this stuff because I can't put any weight on my legs a certain way. I mean, I had to be her advocate and really go after them and tell them what for and say, listen, you listen to her. She knows what her body's like. She knows what the problem is. Take care of her. And they would only listen to me. And granted, I'm another woman, but I was a heck of a lot younger then. And I was her daughter. And I worked for lawyers. And I told them that, which doesn't hurt either. I didn't say I was a lawyer.
That didn't hurt.
I mean, they took care of her, but it was because there was an advocate around. And that really pissed me off because I went, she knows herself. I don't care if she's in her late 70s. You know, she knows her body. And what's the matter with you people? Why don't you listen to her? And that was the first time I ever saw anybody like totally ignore an older person that knew what they wanted to say, and they just didn't take the time to listen. And I have to say, it did piss me off.
Yeah, it would piss me off too. And it's heartbreaking that it has to come to that. And I think we need to be able to ask the right questions, not only in advocacy, but for ourselves too. Like, you seem to have a difficult time, she might have said to her doctor, understanding what I'm saying or taking it in. Do you not believe me? Do you think I'm crazy? What is it that's happening between this connection that keeps you from hearing what I'm saying? That what it feels like is dismissive. Is that something you learned in medical school?
Yeah, it's medicine 101, how to ignore older women.
Yes. So, I mean, one of the things we can learn to do is to speak in a forthright way.
I know that with that, I guess, are there any recommendations on how we can, I like the fact that you said that, but in finding our voice and speaking our truth and going deeper besides that, how can we do that? I mean, I know we need to find our self-confidence more to be able to even be our own advocate or speak whatever we want to say. And for me, I'm going to answer my own question and then ask you to answer it as well. To know that we have value is huge. To take that moment to realize that we do have that value, because otherwise we won't be able to stand up and say something. It's intimidating when somebody will just come right back at you and say, well, no, or they'll ignore you, or they'll walk away, or they'll have that intimidation factor. Like doctors feel like that, especially male doctors to women, you feel dismissed.
Right.
And I think that maybe if we start speaking our truth to people we trust first and see maybe a safer space, if there's something that we want to be heard about. And sometimes it has to be a friend instead of a relative, I think. But I was wondering if you had any recommendations on how to go ahead and start being strong enough to start finding your voice if you don't have that.
You know, I think that you give a very good example. You know, you start close in where you're not going to get grief from it, and you work your way out, so to speak. Finding voice isn't something that just happens once. It's an ongoing, continual process. And so it takes practice. And it's like everything else in life. You just have to keep practicing to the degree that you're able to stand in the light of your truth and speak your truth. And some days you'll do better than others.
Well, and some people don't even know what their truth is.
Well, that's a good point too, isn't it? But that's sort of the purpose of the older years. Life does slow us down to a degree. Nature keeps us alive for a reason. What is that? For me, it's the contemplative aspect, the reflective aspect of aging has served me well. That means that I take time to have my tea on the back porch in the morning and watch the clouds go by, that I muse about the life that I've already lived. And I think about what else would I still like to do as I go deeper and deeper into that eternity that lingers on the horizon. So I think that that's a way to get us to find voice, to find out who we are, to relax a little bit with aging, is to embrace that idea of contemplation, reflection. Those things serve us.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here with my head going, yeah, I love that moment that I've started taking when I have lunch on my balcony and I look at the trees, even though it's a little noisy around here and you may have heard some of the sirens or something. I don't know if you heard it at your end, but I just sort of went, yeah, I mean, it's so beautiful and just sitting there. And I've never taken the time to do that before. I've just recently started doing that. And it's like, wow, this is like really nice. I just need the nice weather to cooperate.
Well, and when you think of all the lunch hours that you worked through when you worked in an office, that you didn't get outside, that you didn't enjoy your lunch somewhere, it was more a matter of sitting in front of the keyboard with a sandwich off to one side. And so now at a stage in your life when you can sit outside and enjoy a lunch and appreciate the trees, I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it really relaxes you and recharges you and all. Sometimes I want to go in and take a nap afterwards just because I'm so relaxed. It's just that time that you give yourself, if you can, because that's where wisdom comes, I think, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I think that it comes from the quiet places that we give ourselves to in our life.
I want to go ahead and ask you a couple questions about your book because when I was reading it, I had a couple questions about it. So maybe other people will too. And that way we can already answer the questions. And when they get to that part of the book, they'll
Okay.
know the answers if they have them. Maybe they'll be smarter than me and get it. Let me ask you, you talk about harmonizing with our younger selves. And I kind of went, did I get what that meant? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, I believe that harmonizing with our younger selves, I can't remember if I used it in Creatrix or if I used it in a delightful little book on aging. There was a Carole King concert done at Hyde Park several years ago. And there is a part in the concert where the young Carole King, the 28-year-old Carole King, is on a giant screen behind the current Carole King, who's in her 70s. And they are both singing, "You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman." And it was so profound to me that this older woman was singing with her younger self. And that's where the idea of the harmony came from. And really, we are asked to do that. We have to make peace with the life that has been lived. If there are mistakes in our past, we need to find a way to harmonize with them. That everything that has happened in our life brought us to where we are right now. And we can't hate one part of our lives and expect to love ourselves in the present moment. So that's what I mean about harmonizing with your younger self. What do we forgive ourselves for? What do we embrace in terms of maybe you didn't have the direction you needed as a young woman? Maybe there wasn't a family safety net. And so you did the best you could do, and there was some screw up that came along with it. But can you forgive yourself for that and realize that life dictates certain things in our life? Whether we like it or not, it's always changing us. So it's up to us to find a way to harmonize with our past. I think especially as we get older, so that we go into that last chapter of our life with some sense of peace about the life we've lived.
Well, and I know that thinking about harmonizing, it was like that releases the fear and any negative stuff we felt about ourselves and other people. And you're saying forgiving yourself. It's like, yeah, I get that. Because sometimes we do things that we think are the best, or maybe we know aren't, but we want to do them anyway.
Right.
And who knows what the result's going to be at the time, and maybe we don't care. But looking back, it's like, well, that was like not my most intelligent choice in the world.
Right.
And maybe we don't put it quite that way, but we might talk ourselves down and say nasty things about ourselves and saying, oh, instead of saying, wow, that was a great lesson I learned. Won't do that again. I hope. We say we're stupid or ugly or whatever. And it's like, hey, let it go.
Right.
You just are going to carry it with you into your future if you don't let go of the negative things about the past and learn from them. I appreciate that. I hadn't realized that that's what you meant exactly. I remember you did talk about that concert, but I was not quite getting it. So thank you for explaining it a little more. Another section that you talk about is finding soul love. I hadn't heard those exact words put together that way before. So other than soulmates and things like that. So where did you come up with that? And what does that mean?
I have no idea where I came up with that, but it fit the feeling tone of the moment, which is soul love is like the soul work that we do. We do lots of different kinds of work in our life. We work at jobs, we do psychological work on ourselves. And then there is a kind of soul work where we surrender to that which feels greater than ourselves. It's the place where we find things like kindness and forgiveness of self. It's the place where we find things like compassion. Those things don't just come to us. We have to earn them. And we earn them through the work that we're willing to do on ourselves, to keep our hearts open to the world, to keep our minds open to what's happening in the world. And that's what I mean when I say soul work.
Because I was kind of going into the loving ourselves is easier going to a soul level instead of like staying from a conscious level. And that's kind of where I went. So that's why I wanted to ask for more information.
Well, sure. And the soul level is if you look at soul, I think that there's perfection. There's always beauty and perfection. in soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that point of view, it's sort of like working from a higher self, whether you call it soul or whatever you call it. But it's working from a higher self that isn't just the physical and the emotional level of things.
Yeah, I know I just did an episode on finding inner peace, which is Bodhi Sanders was interesting because he really talked about looking at the limiting beliefs that we have and doing that subconscious work to change them so you could have peace. So I kind of find like, for me, some of your book was the same thing. It was kind of, it didn't necessarily touch on exactly the same thing, but it was the same kind of feeling I got when I read his. So it was like, oh, good. I'm sort of continuing on and I haven't been reading a lot of, I won't call them self-help book because they're not, but they do. But that's not exactly how I would label them. It's more like a spiritual kind of book in a way because it helps at such a deep level. Right? I like having guests because then I have to read their books and then all of a sudden I'm getting deeper learning without even realizing it. That wasn't the point of doing this so much for myself, but it's fascinating to talk to everybody who's also going through these different learnings and growth, how they're living their lives. So thank you for sharing that in a book form so we can all learn.
Thank you.
I know that I had one more thing I think that had to do with finding your voice. Oh, well, you were talking about how it helps the rest of society and other women. And I was wondering how you see that.
Well, when one woman finds her voice, it changes it for the women around her because they see that behavior and they want to model it or appreciate it in some way. So the work that we do on ourselves, even though it is for ourselves, it really is for the betterment of all the women around us. It's to my advantage that I have spent so much time in my life working on the soul qualities that I want, compassion and self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others. It is to my advantage that you have worked on those things because you bring a feeling tone of that. And when we connect with another human being, we sort of raise our vibration up to where that person might be. And it benefits all of us. So I don't just see it as your work or my work. It's just the work that we do as becoming full and enriched human beings.
Well, and I know I do energy work, which we talk a lot about entrainment. So I really feel like that entrainment, it's exactly what you said, what you work on. You don't even have to talk to the other person sometimes. You just are lifting the world up little by being in your own space and doing your own thing. Whether you do a podcast or you don't do anything but talking to somebody at Safeway, you are helping them and lifting them up and kind of tipping the scale. Maybe in the world where people start shifting and start maybe a little at your own, just in your own little world, they start being nicer, start being kinder, as you're using that word, to other people around them because you've done that work.
I would agree with that.
When you're talking about people staying in their truth and speaking their truth, how do you encourage women to stand in that light of their truth so they can speak it? Is there anything specifically that you'd help people with for that way?
Well, once again, I think that a lot of this stuff is a matter of practice. You hear an idea, you mull over what that idea means to you, and you think about whether or not that's something that you want to try. That's an individual question. It's not for me to give like, this is the answer for the world about how to stand in the light of your truth. But that we have to ask ourselves that question every day. Am I being honest with myself? Am I being honest with other people? Am I really speaking my truth, or am I still at a place where I'm just so eager to say yes to please someone when what I really want to say is no, thank you? So these are just things that we practice. I wish I had something more to give you than that, but that's kind of what it's come down to for me.
One thing that I have found that I have done, and I hope not very many occasions, but I became aware of it when somebody won't respond the way I want them to. I start doing something to manipulate them, and it doesn't seem to be conscious. It's like subconsciously I'll cry, or I'll whine, or I'll complain, or I'll do something just to get them to and instead of speaking my truth and say, hey, I need you to do this. And it's like, what am I doing? I had one guy I was dating for quite a bit of time, and it was like, I don't like me when I'm with this person. This needs to shift. So I didn't realize what I was doing for like a couple of years, going, what is up with that? And I don't think I did it with hardly anybody else, but sometimes you can't be absolute 100% direct with your truth because you'll hurt somebody. And you need to find a way to kind of let them know. But it doesn't mean if you understand your truth, then you can say it in a way that's kind, as you're saying, kind to yourself, kind to them, but you still need to actually put it out there and not try and manipulate somebody around to your way of thinking. And I thought that was speaking my truth by trying to tell them, but I wasn't actually saying it. So you have to kind of listen to yourself because sometimes you aren't saying what you think you are.
Right.
You think you're being clear and you're not because you're sending weird signals out to people.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think that, truth is a bigger word than just what's happening in the situation or what's happening in the moment. Do you think I look good in this red dress? Even when everything in you is screaming no. Yes, I understand that you would say the greater truth would be to say, I think if that dress makes you happy, you should wear it. The greater truth is that we remain kind, that we remain loving, that we remain open. And the little truths, they require some honesty and some vigilance, but it's the bigger truth, I think, that women are looking for. When I say stand in the light of your truth, what is your truth? My truth is that I'm a capable woman. My truth is that I do my best to love the people that I come into contact with. My truth is that I want to uplift other women. That's the big truth. That's the light that I want to stand in. And then the rest is kind of the stuff that happens in the course of a day or a week or a month or a year.
Thank you for that. That was really good. Because my podcast is all about connecting to joy. So I wanted to ask you, how can women finding their truth and speaking their truth bring them joy? Because sometimes it's a little awkward and a little uncomfortable. And I know you said practice, but is there more than that you can add?
Well, I think that if we're speaking our truth from a place of love, I question if truth is not spoken in love, is it really the truth? What is it that you're really saying?
Interesting.
So I think joy comes when we're being true to ourselves. And if you are a loving woman and you are speaking in love, then you are being true to yourself.
And joy is just automatically there.
Joy is automatically there. And, joy is such an interesting phrase because I think it's something that we all want. And we sometimes miss the spontaneousness of it in our lives. It's like you sitting on your balcony having lunch among the treetops. There's joy in that. For me, it's sitting on my back porch in the morning with a cup of tea, or in my case, a steaming mug of tea because I drink a lot of caffeine in the morning. But those little spontaneous moments in life that create joy, I think that's what fills me. I was in the backyard a couple nights ago with my dog and, him doing his business before we went into bed. And I saw that the fireflies were out. And so for a while, I just stood there by the tree, watching the fireflies dart in and out of the trees, watching the starlight do the same thing. And it was just this spontaneous joy of like, oh my God, the world is so beautiful. And we're exposed to that many times in the course of a day. And sometimes we don't take it. Sometimes we don't take the gift.
I think many times, not just sometimes, because we're so busy. We're doing something. We don't see those opportunities to take it in. We don't see possibilities for a lot of things in our lives because we're too closed down, or I don't know if I want to use the word narrow-minded, but we're too focused on a specific thing so that we don't see the world around us or those possibilities or those nice people that maybe they say go in front of us and you go, oh, and you keep, you don't even say thank you sometimes. You barely say it instead of taking a moment and chatting with them and getting that nice interaction. You just sort of go. So finding that joy is totally up to you. It's not up to anything around you. It's up to you to take those moments.
Agreed.
Anyway, I always like to have a moment of joy in the podcast.
It's a good thing.
Before we go, I always ask everyone the same question, kind of slanted towards the category that we're talking about. I always ask for an action step for the listeners because I want them to be able to take an action step. So what are the top 3 things you would tell, especially women who are of a whatever age they're at, as we're getting at least over 50 probably, although some people are starting to think things through a little younger now. What would help them to take action in finding their voice and speaking their truth? And I always answer this as well, but I wanted you to go first in case you have the same answer as I do.
I would say practice gratitude, kindness, and compassion daily. find a way to practice those things with the people that are in your world. That's the action step.
Okay, so say those 3 words again.
Gratitude, kindness, and compassion.
Gratitude, kindness, and compassion. Okay, wanted to make sure we said it one more time. Mine are a little more complicated.
Okay.
Mine is just know what you want and believe in yourself, because you have to check your communications. I kind of mentioned this earlier, to see if what you're saying is what other people are hearing. Because sometimes you think you're speaking your truth and they're not hearing you, but it might be on your side of the equation where you could speak clearer, especially certain people hear things certain ways. And maybe you know somebody you talk to all the time and they need you to say things in a different manner. And then you totally connect. But if they're not hearing you, perhaps that's it. And you should rethink how you're communicating to someone. And that may help. Just adjust it. It doesn't mean you're not speaking your truth. It means maybe you're just adjusting the way you say it, especially for somebody. And have patience, because sometimes people need you to have patience with them because they're not in their kindness mode. And you may go, okay, let me try this again. And sometimes be persistent, I guess, with that patience, because you need to make sure that you're coming from that place when you're finding your truth to actually connect in a better way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, patience is a good one. That's a really good one to practice.
Yeah, it's something that I find is I'm really good with jigsaw puzzles and things, but not as much with people. So that's why I am learning. I think my sister is my gift, because when I'm with her and she doesn't remember something in short-term memory and she gets something stuck in her head that's not correct, it's not accurate, I go, no, okay, how can I get it? Okay, what can I do? How can I do this? Have patience. And so patience, I think, is something that's the gift right now that I'm learning with people, which I can use forever in the rest of my life and maybe towards myself at some point. Well, I want to thank everybody as I start closing down this for joining us here today. And I want to thank especially you, Stephanie, for discussing finding our voice as we age. And you'll find in the show notes links both my and Stephanie's social media and our websites. And you can get more information about both of Stephanie's books, Creatrix Rising and A Delightful Little Book on Aging, on our website. And you can purchase them from Amazon.com. They're both there. So if you'd like to know more about life coaching with me, intuitive readings, or marconics multidimensional energy, either to receive the energy or to become a practitioner, reach out to me either by email at carol@connecttojoy.com or through my website. And Stephanie, thank you. It's been fascinating and an absolute pleasure. Thanks for being here.
It has been an absolute pleasure from this end too. Thank you so much.
And until next week, be courageous and reach higher. And remember, transformation is a journey and not an end destination. So be kind to yourself. Just take one step at a time. Get that practice. Get the help you need. And get out there and find your joy and speak your truth. Make you a priority because you deserve it.
Thank you for listening to Connect to Joy. If you love the show, make sure you rate, review, and share this podcast. And subscribe so you never miss an episode. Contact the host, Carol DeChaine, with questions and comments, ideas for future episodes, or if you would like to become a guest. And remember, transformation is a journey and not an end destination. So be kind to yourself, because you are already enough to have the joyful, limitless life that you desire.